hope which meets in the present. And at present we experience rain and sun and great winds, so much like our lives right now, sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy, and the winds of change are swirling around us. Our hope lies in the memory that we go through these times best when we go through them together. We are a community of memory and hope which meets in the present. Please be present to yourself in these times and be blessed.
Good morning. And welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. My name is Beverly Church, and I'm a member of the Religious Education Committee. Our minister, Reverend Leonetta, is out of the pulpit today, and we're fortunate to have with us Reverend John Corrado. He is Minister Emeritus of Grosse Pointe Unitarian Church, where he served for 25 of his 44 years as a full-time pastor. He officially retired in 2009, but continues to speak to congregations throughout the area. He is also an experienced musician, hymnist, and orchestrator. Rather than our traditional coffee hour in Adams Hall, we invite you to stay and socialize in the parking lot or on the lawn for the next several weeks, weather permitting. You may want to keep a lawn chair in your car for this. If you have a joy or sorrow you'd like to share, please fill out a blue card, which you can get from one of the ushers, and it will be read later in the service. As we begin our service, we remember that our UU principles begin with our pledge to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We are a welcoming congregation. We welcome into our community people of all races, sexual orientations, belief systems, and ages. I have a couple of announcements. While we are gathered indoors today due to this weekend's unpredictable weather, we want to invite you to our official building reopening service on July 11th. We will be closed next week on July 4th for the holiday, but we'll return to the building for a joyous celebration with our own Reverend Leonetta, who has some fun plans and a special sermon prepared to mark the end of this long journey to return to indoor service together. Also, membership needs you to walk in the parade for the Farmington Founders Festival on July 17th at 10 a.m. We had a great turnout in the past and would love to represent the church and the community with you on July 17th. See Hope Sorensen, who is in the back, is an usher today, or Tom Borkland, who is also in the back, for more information. Are there any other announcements at this time? Please check the order of service for other announcements about upcoming events. Excuse me. Please join me for the Litany of Gathering, which is on page 2 of your order of service. Infinite Spirit, Creator, we gather to praise your creation, to honor the swimmers and crawlers, the four-leggeds and the winged ones. We give thanks for the beauty and glory of creation and open our hearts to new ways to understand our place in the universe. Not the center or focus, but a humble and balanced place, where every step we take becomes a prayer, where every word we say makes harmony with the vast, vibrating cosmos, and where we know we are singing the song of life. We pray to know more deeply that that we are in the garden where every plant and animal, speck of dust, is a living prayer. Without our brothers and sisters of the plant and animal and mineral kingdoms, the human family would end. So we want to bless them as they bless us. Wondrous trees, breathing life into the atmosphere, gifts of fire, shelter, and fruit are precious to us. And in many ways, you offer us leaves of knowledge. With thanks for the surprise and mystery of it all, we pray in the name of the Creator, the processes, presences, and all our relations. Our first hymn is number 65, the Sweet June Days. By Jane Marshall. This gift we now bring, this present, this token, these words can convey it, the joy of this day. When grateful we come, remembering, rejoicing, this contribution we now offer in honor and praise. A perfect heart is one that has known love and loss, joy and sorrow. The perfect heart is one that has been shared. As joys and sorrows of our community are shared, please direct your energy, prayers, and meditations as a gift of compassion and strength. This is from Mark and Kelly Petrie. Away last Monday. Her husband came to us for help, but we and emergency services was too late. She was loved by everyone on our block and will be greatly missed.
Yes. Well, before meditation, I always like to have a few wisdom lines around, and so I will. And you only really keep what you give. So, if you saw the movie How Green Was My Valley or read the book, these words may be some you remember. Prayer is only another name for good, plain, clean, direct thinking. When you pray, think well what you are saying and make your thought into things that are solid. In that manner, your prayer will have strength, and that strength will become part of you, mind, body, and spirit. However, when you're driving down the highway, 10 miles over the speed limit, between two diesel semis and behind a moving van on a rainy night with your seatbelt unbuckled and no tread in your tires, and all of a sudden the doors of the moving van fly open and a grand piano with a 4-poster bed strapped to it comes rolling out on the freeway. It's at a time like this that the average person learns to pray. And finally, this is a prayer to be said when the world has gotten you down, you feel rotten, you're too doggone tired to pray, you're in a big hurry, and besides, you're mad at everybody. Help! And let these words then take you wherever your heart and mind need to take you. Well, here we are again, wandering souls, some of us certain of uncertainties and others uncertain of what we surely know. We come with hungers that are deep and broad, hungers that usually remain unspoken, hungers for acceptance, for love, for meaning, hungers for a connection with, or at least an intimation of the reality that's deepest within and farthest beyond. Hungers that we cover with our learning. More music is always good. You know, it's really funny. It was going to be outside, and you had Ken Pfeiffer, a dear friend who was outside a few weeks back, and he said, he compared it to being outside with Jesus. And here we are inside, and here I am, sans robe, sans coat. I feel like one of those tent evangelists, which, of course, since I'm a preacher, reminds me of a story. This evangelist is out in one of these big tents. It's a hot summer night, but the place is crowded, jam-packed with people, and he's really feeling good. And so he says, I'm feeling so good tonight that I think I could preach on anything in the world. So ushers, I want you to pass out these little 3x5 cards. And friends, please write down anything on your mind that I might preach on. We'll put them in this big fish bowl. I'll pick one out, and that will be my story for today. And as directed, the ushers went out. They put him in the fish bowl. They bring him up to him, and he puts his hand in, and he pulls out, and he reads, pills. There are all kinds of pills. There are big pills, and there are small pills. There are round pills, there are oblong pills, there are blue pills, and there are white pills. But the greatest pill of all is the gospel. Well, I'm not going to start with the gospel today, but I will start with some words from a favorite philosopher of mine, Yogi Berra, who, as you know, has said some great bits of wisdom now into our language, like deja vu all over again, a nickel ain't worth a dime anymore, and it ain't over till it's over. And one of my favorites, if you come upon a fork in the road, take it. Well, I'll tell you what, folks, I did. So here it is. You know, so much of what happens in our lives is how we perceive it. You know, we think we know something, and, you know, maybe we're just stuck in our own perceptions. And that goes for a lot of things, including the topic of the day, as you know, which is prayer. And prayer for individuals, prayer that you do on your own. Unitarians, if you ask them collectively, they might say one thing. You ask them individually, they say another. And the joke goes, all prayers with Unitarians start with, to whom it may concern. So today I want to talk about prayer. And first of all, there are two things I am not going to talk about. One of them is prayer as Santa Claus in the sky. You know, I want a bike. Please, God, give me a bike for Christmas. I'm not going to talk about that. That's second grade stuff, and rejecting it is about the same. I am also not going to talk about what I call the sinus prayers, which I have a problem with anyway. But, you know, you've seen the evangelists on television. They get down, they have a headache. Oh, God. Do you know what I mean? Seen that? What I love is when they genuflect and you see the back of their shoes. They're always brand new. Don't know what that means. I'm not going to talk about that kind of prayer. But first, a little maybe audience participation. We'll see if anyone's bold enough to answer a question. Anybody? Why would you pray? Anybody want to say something?
For comfort.
For comfort. Okay. Comfort? Any? To clarify your thoughts. That's another good one. For gratitude. Yeah, there are reasons. We have them. And maybe it's my calling, but I've done a lot of reading on prayer over the years. At least a bookshelf this wide of it. And I have to tell you, I've learned most from the witness of others, from people I've run into. And that's what I'm going to speak about today. People I've known, Fred and Jiggs and Sandy, a couple of guys named Frank, the Reagan family, not Ronnie, Ellie and Loring, and some folks in Peoria. And what I hope to do is to offer maybe some hints, some glimpses, some other ways of widening the thought about prayer. First, something that I've done with seminars that I have conducted, and I want some of you can, I know won't do this, but those who will may do this. Now put your feet flat on the floor, take a deep breath, close your eyes. Okay, look to the east and put your right leg over your left knee. And now lift that leg up and cross your eyes. And okay, you're getting it, right? And I've seen this, I've seen things like this in churches. I've seen people telling you how you should pray. Okay? Now that may work for you. All of that might work for you. It doesn't for me, especially the East and the West. I always get confused about which is which. But the point of this, something I want to start with, is that nobody can tell you exactly how to pray or exactly how you can pray, because nothing like you has ever been seen before. Nothing like you has existed in days of yore or in the future. You are unique, you are precious, you have a different life, and your experiences are different. And whatever knowledge you get, and there's plenty of it around, has to be yours. And if it's going to be real, it has to be yours. So let's go to the witnesses. Frank Lee, friend, Lutheran pastor. We shared kind of a neighborhood back in Maryland near the District of Columbia. And going out to lunch one day, I stop in his office and I see he has a blackboard there and he's written all kinds of things for a seminar, and he says something about prayer. Well, I'm always willing to learn, I think. And I said, prayer, what do you do with that? And he said, well, and this may seem obvious, he said, I tell people always to start with I statements. You know, I want, I need, I'm scared. I statements. Because if you listen to yourself, it tells you something about who you are, but you need to go deeper. And this is where a friend named Fred Schroeder comes in. He said, whatever you say the answer to this is, ask it again. Ask it again and look into it. Don't settle for your first response. Sometimes first responses don't work for people. In the 19th century, carriage makers were trying to think of how to make better carriages to carry people. That was the first question they asked. They should have gone deeper and thought, we're really in the transportation business, because then they would have been more creative. We don't see horse-drawn carriages a lot these days, do we? Go and ask deeper. And if you want a model for this, the Old Testament Psalms, otherwise known as Israel's prayer book, they're filled with what are called dynamic psalms. You can tell which are dynamic psalms because they start with, I'm afraid, or I have more enemies than I have hairs on my head. And they keep on going into, what am I afraid of? What do I want? Who do I ask? They're there, starting with the I statements. And if that isn't for you, some of you will remember the Unitarian troubadour, Rick Maston. Any of you know that name? I guess not. Well, he wrote a lot of tunes that people like, and he performed them in our churches. And honest to God, whether he knew it or not, he paraphrased the 69th Psalm, which, with his song, which was, I ain't waving, babe, I'm drowning. Psalm 69, the water is over my head. So, I statements, I statements. Number two, it came up here already, something that Ken Pfeiffer and I talked about just this week, something we realize we both do, we wished we had done when we were younger, and we each do it, of course, in our own way. It is best and most simply put by a musician friend who I first met up with before I went to college even, Jiggs Wiggum, who says, I say, thanks. He said, I don't know to who, I don't know to what, I don't know how, but I have to say thanks. Thanks. Just think of all the things you need to be thankful for, even if it's this taste of strawberries and the ability while you're young to walk uphill, whatever it is. And if you don't think that you say it, if you're cynical enough, just think of how often people say things like, thank goodness you're safe. Thanks. Thank you. Famous mystic Meister Eckhart once said, if the only prayer you ever say in your whole life is thank you, that would suffice. I love what a former parishioner, Sandy Birch, said to me. She said, every day I wake up thanking God for being invited back. Thank you. Utter thanks. Well, then there's something I learned, or did I, from Frank Hall. Frank is a retired Unitarian minister, one of the menschiest, sweetest, nicest men you can imagine, full of heart. Well, we were at a retreat, and somehow casually he said, at night he said, I forget about this stuff. I say my prayers and I go to sleep. So once again, here I am. I said, well, what do you do, Frank? He said, I usually say the Our Father, and I'm usually asleep before I finish. Now, probably a really intelligent person might think, oh, so he says, Our Father, and then he snoozes, right? But that's not me. There's a kid in me, partly, and there's a jazz musician. So I started thinking, oh, well, the reason that it takes a while to go to sleep is that he really works the prayer, just like a jazz musician works a song. He'll say, Our Father, our, not yours, not mine, but our. We're in this together. Father, or mother, or source, or something. We are all children together. And I went on, and I'm driving from the retreat, and oh my God, there's an hour of this going on. You probably didn't want to be in the car, right? But if this isn't helpful, I want to give you, I think, the ultimate test of universalism and the ultimate test of the principle that you heard about worth and dignity. If you really believe it, if you really want to be a universalist, then here's the test. Get on a crowded subway in New York City on a hot day like this and look around, and you look around and you see there's the bag lady who smells bad and has one tooth, and there's this big rough guy with all the tattoos and chains and the ghetto blaster on his shoulder, and it's going, and there's the guy who's leering and has hands that move all over, and say, Our Father. Say, we are all connected. We're all one family. Now, the usual temptation is to say, well, yeah, but that's my wife's side of the family. That's not me. But if you can say that, that we are all children, we are all one, worth and dignity, any way you want to put it, then you're really the universalist you want to be. Okay. Then there's something I have observed in the television show Blue Bloods. Nods. Anybody here watch that besides me? Oh, thank goodness there's a few of you. It is a Tom Selleck. Ladies, maybe that'll get you to turn it on, okay? It is a story about a family of policemen. So Blue Bloods is kind of a pun even. They are blue bloods and they are blue because they are police. But the part of the stories every week that I love the most is not the mystery they're solving, not the crime they're trying to solve, but it is their dinner. They have a Sunday dinner, they all gather, and they all share what's going on in their lives, and they all start off with a prayer together. Well, I started looking at that and saying, well, what does this say? Started to parse the situation. Well, first of all, it says they gather together, they share, they say a common prayer. I said, this is a beloved community, not the cliche version, but something that really happens. Second of all, that when they say this, they're expressing gratitude for not only their food, but for being together. And they're celebrating their bond, and they are taking a moment out of time, out of all of their agendas, out of everything that's happening to them, to be together, to be focused, and say these words together. that they know. So they're speaking of a common faith, something they have together, and they're expressing it. And there is something so bonding and special about seeing that. Someone once wrote that there is nothing more beautiful than a church full of people who really care about one another. Okay, well, one of the things they do is they say a set prayer. They always say the Roman Catholic grace. That's what you call a set prayer, like the Our Father or Hail Mary, or those of you familiar with or part of with AA, the Serenity Prayer, something that's memorized and said. Is this something for religious liberals? Well, if Ellie Keeler were here, she'd tell you. Ellie was a member of the church I served in Albany, New York. And Ellie fell ill. No one knew, not even the doctors at first, what this was that caused her illness. But she went into a coma, and she was in and out of the coma for actually a couple of months. When she came out, and during one of my visits with her, I started asking her questions and letting her talk about what was going on and how she felt and how she made it through it. What kept you going? And she said, I remembered the words of a couple of hymns I knew as a child, and I would say them in my head again and again and again. Well, the hospital or the emergency room is not a place for creative thinking. It's not a place where you can create a wonderful prayer with all the things you want to include. It's a place where you can't. And so sometimes the set prayer is very, very, very helpful. Even a few words of it. I visited with a woman who was about to go into an operation, and she was somewhat anxious. And I asked her, I said, well, what is your favorite prayer? And she told me, and I thought, well, I said, well, that's a little long. Let's take out the words that are most important to you. And she did, and she'd say them. And this gave her some comfort and relief and hope. Okay. Quick tangent. What about intercessory prayer? In other words, praying for other people. Outside of Congress, where everybody's in their thoughts and prayers, and I think, oh, that's such nonsense. I don't believe that. Sorry I'm so cynical, but I've been around the block more than once. I don't know about you, but I will take all the prayers anybody ever wants to give me. I'll take them. I've told that to fundamentalists who are praying for my soul right now, I know, because they've told me that. Say, fine, yes. Because what does that say? It says several things in this world that is so cockamamie split and angry with science just not listening. It says minimally, I recognize your existence. I care enough to care about you. You are thought about, and you are not alone. Now, can I tell you the efficacy of intercessory prayer? Not scientifically, but if you're really cynical about it, I want you to think about this. I have known people who don't believe in prayer for others, and yet they root for the home team. Just think about that. So finally, let's go to Peoria. Okay. A few decades ago, I was conducting a 2-day worship workshop, and it was near the end of the second day, time for the final questions. But here I am. I've been working for these couple of days. I've got to get a ride for a plane, and I'm also aware of my bladder. You guys, you understand that, right? You can say that in church. Okay, so question comes up from a woman in a very small church. And I couldn't really read whether it was ennui or dismissiveness or frustration on her part or what, but she said, you know, my church, how am I going to do this? What do I tell them? We have a Buddhist, we have 2 Jews, we got 3 agnostics, we got a couple of Christians, a pagan, we got a pantheist. And I'm thinking, this takes me back to my days, in junior high when we had baseball cards. I'll give you 2 Mickey Mantles if you'll give me 3 Yogi Berra, because all of these labels, all of these names coming flooding there. What are you going to tell them? So there I am under the circumstances I have just described, so that here I am like this, and it's suddenly that I channel my Father, not the one in heaven, wherever that might be, but my Father, the parole officer and tough guy. What do I tell him? I said, the first thing I tell him is to knock off the nonsense. Only I didn't say nonsense. You're not supposed to say bullshit in church, so I didn't say that. I'd say, knock off the nonsense. Here's the truth. We are upper middle class people. Your people are. I know they are. In middle America, in the middle of a troubled economy, with bills to pay, with bodies that ache, with kids that won't listen, and probably cats that are incontinent. Now start there. Start there, not with your labels. Start with what's really happening in your life. And it doesn't matter if you're a pantheist, or if you are an agnostic, or if you're a liberal Christian, or if you have 2 Phil Rizzutos from my Yogi Berra. It doesn't matter. Well, haven't got a prayer? I started out by asking why pray, and you made some suggestions, and I wrote down some suggestions I've heard from others over the years. Why pray? You'll like yourself better. You'll be more accepting of others. You will start to think more clearly. You will begin to see the world as revelation and people as embodiments of divinity. Now, some of you must be familiar with David Brooks, the columnist and newscaster. In one of his recent books, he wrote about his own coming to grips with his religion. He said, and then suddenly, the more I thought about my religion, I started seeing souls. I started seeing people as souls. Okay. You will discover depths in yourself that you didn't know were there. You will become more serious and playful, more forbearing, more defiant, more modest, more audacious. You will know something. Prayer is like science in that it's original research. I will just conclude with these words of a Unitarian minister, Loring Prosser. He puts it this way. Your spiritual, prayer, life is a most precious possession. Your house, the wind might blow it down. Your car might get smashed. Your family and your loved ones, even your relationships with those can be lost, but can be spiritual, but not as something you possess. Your spiritual life is your most precious possession. Nurture it, grow in it. Don't be afraid to become more than you were. Take it easy, but take it. It's up to each of us, and no one can do it for you. Your inner life. Take it easy, but take it. To which I can only say, amen. Closing hymn is number 391, Voice Still and Small. joy still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, sing. In fervent rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, sing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, sing. Your spiritual life is your most precious possession. Nurture it, grow in it. Don't be afraid to become more than you were. Take it easy, but take it. Amen.